Lesson 17, Creating Captures. In our previous lessons, we learned various basic capturing methods. So, what exactly is creating captures? Well, simply put, it is combining the basic Atari move we learned before with the various capturing methods we just covered. This produces a technique known as creating captures. Let's demonstrate this with a few examples. Let's first look at the shape. Okay, now on the board, we see white, forming a shape that seals black in. You might not fully understand the meaning of this shape yet, but let's take a look at white and see if there are any defects in its outside shape. Based on the capturing methods we've learned so far, we can't really see any problems with white. But we can try using an Atari move first. When black plays Atari here or over here, the order of these moves can be swapped. After the Atari, we see that white normally has to connect. Then we will notice that a double Atari appears right at this position. Similarly, if black first plays Atari here and white connects, a double Atari will also appear at this position. So, using capturing methods formed after an Atari is simply what we call creating captures. The shape we are looking at now is actually creating a double Atari. Because sometimes a double Atari is right in front of you, and you can easily see it. But if it requires an extra Atari to form the double Atari, it might easily be overlooked. Okay, next let's take a look at this shape. Now, how should black capture this white stone? Well, here, black also needs to use the Atari technique. We must play Atari first, forcing white to connect here. Then, black plays Atari downwards and can smoothly capture this white stone. This is also a downward Atari created by a previous Atari. Okay, let's look at another example of a closing in capture created by an Atari. Now, looking at the board, there isn't a direct closing in capture shape here, but we still need to learn to use an Atari first. To expose a defect in white's shape, play Atari at this position, and white can only connect now. Then the closing in capture shape appears right here, and I can capture it like this. When playing Atari, we must be careful not to play it in the wrong direction. Because in a situation like this, if you play Atari in the wrong direction, you obviously won't be able to exploit white's defect. So, we must always pay attention to the direction of our Atari. So that was the closing in capture. We can obviously also create an engulfing Atari shape. For example, this is an engulfing Atari shape. Now we can see that on the surface, white has already surrounded this black stone. However, if black plays Atari here first, white can only connect. Then this engulfing Atari shape appears. We use the presence of this stone to play Atari right here. White can no longer escape. And this engulfing Atari captures white. So this is very important. We must be careful not to play in the wrong direction, right? Playing the wrong way ruins it. Also, we need to understand a concept called move order. What exactly is move order? It is exactly the same as our understanding of order in real life. It is extremely important, and you cannot get the order wrong. For example, if black directly cuts here, that is obviously incorrect. Right. So, to create captures, we must find the right Atari position. And after confirming the correct direction, we can find the correct capturing method. Let's continue trying. Let's look at a shape involving a net. Let's set up a net shape like this. After black plays Atari and white extends, how should black capture white with the next move? We've learned about the net. It is like putting a yoke or handcuffs on the stones, netting them at a position slightly ahead to prevent them from escaping outwards. If we try to net directly, we will find that it doesn't work. White can simply capture back here. This is actually an engulfing Atari shape, right? Black's net fails here. So if black wants to capture these two white stones, black can choose to play Atari here first. White can only connect, and then the net becomes effective. Now white has no way to break out from either side. If white plays Atari here, black can just escape. Then white's three stones are put into Atari by black instead. So if black wants to capture white here, black must play Atari first, before playing the net. Alright, this is a typical example of creating captures. Now, let's look at another one, connect and die. Let's review all the shapes we've learned before by setting them up. Of course, in actual games, these capturing shapes are practically endless. So we need to develop a good habit. Before the capturing shape is even fully formed, we should already spot the possibility of a capture and then utilize an Atari. Because we haven't learned the concept of Sente yet, but we have learned about Atari. And an Atari is a type of Sente. We can use the Atari method to create shapes that can capture stones. For example, white's shape here has a defect. Black can start by playing Atari here, and white can only connect. Then black continues to Atari, forming a connect and die shape right here. White cannot connect here, or they will all be captured. So, for this technique, of creating captures, we must emphasize paying attention to the Atari direction, right? If black plays Atari at this position, the vulnerability to capture the stones obviously disappears. All right, that was creating a connect and die. We also have creating a snapback. Let's look at a shape for creating a snapback. Now, for example, we can set up the stones like this. Okay, good. We can see that on white's outside, it looks like it has captured two black stones. It seems that black has territory here, and here is white territory. The two sides appear to be clearly separated. But we can use Atari here. In this problem, we can play continuous Ataris. First, black can play Atari here, and white can only connect. Then black can play Atari here again. It looks like white's only option is to capture. Then, at this moment, the snapback shape appears. We throw in here and can capture white's three stones. Of course, regarding the order of your Ataris here, since we haven't discussed how to judge the value of moves yet, we just need to know that for this order, even if you play it wrong or swap them, you can still achieve the snapback. There is no problem with that. So this is how you create a snapback through an Atari. We seem to be missing one, creating a ladder through an Atari. Let's add one more example, creating a ladder through an Atari. There are indeed many similar shapes like this. For example, in a shape like this, if we want to capture this white stone, it is very simple. We just play Atari first, and after white connects, we cut it, and then the ladder shape will appear. When white tries to run, we can choose between two directions. One is to play the ladder from this direction, and the other is from this direction. Of course, before we play this move, we must first check if white has a working ladder breaker. Of course, our main focus here is creating a ladder. That is using an Atari to set up the next capturing method or capturing technique. Alright, that concludes the content for this lesson.